Hey guys, Mike in the woods here. When camping out in the middle of winter, having a campfire is more important than any other time of year. In survival situations, it can literally be the difference between life and death. And when trying to build a campfire in snowy winter conditions, there are a few extra things to keep in mind, which, as you guessed, I aim to go over in this video. This video actually builds off an earlier video I did that explains the basics of building a regular campfire. In snowy winter conditions, it's basically the same at its core, just like I said, with a few extra considerations. So I really do suggest watching that one first. Link up at the top of the screen. Like I said, for the most part, building a campfire in cold, snowy conditions is basically the same as any other time of year, just there's a few extra things to keep in mind. The first and quite obvious one is the fact that there's a lot of snow around. Snow plus heat equals water, which is bad news bears for firewood, which needs to be dry in order to burn. If you set up on loose snow, your fire might burn okay initially, but as the heat melts the snow around it, your firewood's gonna soak up all the water and turn into a soggy, smoldering mess. Luckily, there is some ways to counter it. Firstly, if the snow isn't that deep, dig right to the ground to clear out a good spot for your campfire to sit with a good bit of clearance around it for your fire to breathe. Failing that, do your best to stomp down the snow as hard and flat as you can get it. Snowshoes help here, and then build a platform on top for your campfire to sit, either out of rocks or a set of sacrificial logs that aren't meant to be part of the main combustion process. This keeps it up off the melting snow and prevents your firewood from getting waterlogged. The second thing to keep in mind is that finding firewood can be annoying, especially if there is snow on the ground. All the dry deadfall, sticks for kindling, and duff for tinder is now buried under snow, and the smaller pieces are likely waterlogged. Larger deadfall dug up out of the snow can actually still be dry for use as firewood, especially if the temperature is well below freezing. If you're not sure, snap or crack a branch or log in half to see if it feels wet on the inside. Finding wood under the snow can be a pain in the butt, and outright impossible if you're dealing with several feet of snow on the ground, so you'd be limited to deadfall that's sticking up out of the snow or standing dead that you can chop down. And therein lies the problem. If you're still new to winter camping, identifying dead standing from living trees can be difficult if you don't know what to look for, since all the leaves on deciduous have fallen off and coniferous trees have greenery year-round. You don't want to use living trees for firewood, firstly because it's wasteful to kill a perfectly healthy tree, and secondly, they're full of water and just don't burn properly. Two dead giveaways that a tree is dead is if it's missing a significant portion of its bark or has a large amount of fungus growing on it. If you're not sure, there's a few ways to check. You can carefully scrape or saw through the outer layer of bark and look for green. Dead trees or branches on otherwise living trees will be brown instead of green, indicating that that particular tree or limb is dead, depending on where you checked. And then the other one is you can shake the branch you're curious about. Living wood will have flexibility without cracking and be heavier. Dead wood will crack and snap and feel lighter or even hollow. And, just to be clear, individual branches may be dead wood, but the main tree may still be alive. And the last thing to keep in mind is how much firewood you need. Once you think you've gathered enough firewood, 4x or 5x the amount you have. You'll be surprised at how much firewood you consume, especially if you use it to keep yourself warm overnight. Not just because you have the fire going for longer, but because you'll need to make your fire larger. To cap off this video, let's talk about a specific fire build for cold weather applications, the Long Fire. It's a simple but effective campfire that generates a lot of heat and lasts a long time. Great for overnight camping, in open shelters, or even survival situations where you need a good fire to survive the night. You'll need about 2 logs about 6 feet in length. Doesn't have to be exact, just gauge it based on your height. I'm 5 foot 10 inches, so I just grab ones that are roughly as tall as I am. The thicker the logs, the better. You'll also need 2 shorter logs, give or take about half as long, and you want to lay the 2 shorter logs parallel to each other, far enough apart that your 2 long logs can lay across them with a big gap in the middle. The gap underneath, caused by the elevation, is important as it allows the fire to suck in the vast amounts of oxygen it needs during its initial burning stage. In the big center gap, you're going to densely stuff as much pencil-sized kindling as you can manage without choking it to the point where it can't breathe. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 armfuls should be enough. And aside from that, gather enough regular-sized fuel wood, pieces about the diameter of your forearm, to lay perpendicular across the entire length of the long logs, but don't put them on quite yet. First, you want to start your fire as you would any normal fire. Pilot a tinder fire on top of your packed kindling as talked about in the original How to Make a Campfire video. As it starts to spread through the kindling, be advised that your fire will get super big and hot very fast. At this point, work to lay your gathered fuel pieces across the long logs before it gets too hot for you to handle, leaving gaps in between them, of course. Let this fire burn down to embers until your large, long logs, the 6-foot ones, finally start burning, and then carefully remove the shorter end cap logs that they are resting on, so that your long logs, which are now actually burning, lie directly in the hot coals from the rest of your fire. You can put the end cap logs diagonally across the longer logs to create a sort of double stack of thick logs to burn. And the end result is a very long burning furnace of a fire that should put out lots of heat for many hours. So there we go. Things to keep in mind when building a winter fire, and a specific build that's good for cold weather overnighters. Keep your fire up out of the snow and gather at least 4 times as much firewood as you think you'll need. I'll pop a link to my playlist of other winter camping videos up at the top of the screen and in the description if you want to see some other tutorials and trips that I've been on in the winter. If you're new to this channel, I take a look at how fun, futuristic technology can intersect with traditional outdoors experiences. Check out my other videos and consider subscribing if that's your thing. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.